the story du jour. The topic du jour is reopening, and we've heard from Ronan Glynn, Dr. Mary Favier, we've heard from Dr. Colm Henry, we've heard from the Taoiseach, we heard from the Taoiseach yesterday. There are some caveats about a full reopening. What's the story?
Well, it's always been the case that as we get ready to make another decision about the opening of our economy, we have to see where we are with the disease. And while we have made gigantic progress in Ireland across this year in reducing the spread of disease, it has now stabilised at a higher level than we would have hoped for. And there are some signs of concern. What I want to avoid is being in a situation that the progress that we've made with reopening the economy, that we have to reverse our current level of progress. So NPHET are going to be meeting early next week. They'll advise the government and we'll make a decision on the matter on Tuesday.
Do you think, though, it's about human behaviour more than anything else? Because anecdotally, you can see you go into shops, not everyone hand sanitizes. Sometimes the machines, the sanitising machines are empty now. You know, the same rigour is not being applied.
It's always been a combination of a few things. It's the nature of the disease and then the kind of engagement, the kind of activity we have in our society. I still think overall the adherence and compliance with our public health regulations on the whole is good. But on the other hand, there can be little doubt, because we're all human, that the longer it goes on, our focus goes elsewhere. And what we need to do now is, with the state of the disease at the moment, we have to ensure that we don't step back from where we are at the moment. And that may mean further decisions early next week.
I mean, even NPHET see this as a bit of a puzzler, you know, high vaccination rates and increasing rates of infection.
And what we have learned from battling this disease now for so long is that it is unknowable and inherently unpredictable. It may take some time before we can exactly understand what is happening. It may be to do with, you're right, the level of engagement, the way we engage with each other as a society, combined with the fact that the disease is still really, really infectious. But there are questions for another day, maybe maybe even for another year. What really matters to me at the moment is that the progress that we have made in our current level of opening, that we don't have to reverse that. And as you well know, we are coming into a period as we approach, later in the year and early next year, which are traditionally very difficult for our hospitals anyway. And our hospitals are already really busy. And that's going to be a factor in reopening anymore.
Yeah, and we do have the flu season coming upon us, and the flu vaccine is available. What about boosters? We hear from the Taoiseach, I think last night, suggesting that boosters could be on the way for a wider cohort, but we're waiting for NIAC to give the nod. I mean, NIAC have already given the nod in the sense that for the over 80s, for those vulnerable over 65 in nursing homes, it's fine, it's safe. So if you like, what's keeping them?
Well, there may well be a case for going further than that. We have here in Ireland shown two things. The first one is that we can vaccinate at scale, and we can do that quickly. And the second thing, and this is entirely due to your listeners and our country overall, the willingness of our country to get vaccinated and get vaccinated quickly. And that may mean that as we move into a little later in the year, we may have to do more in vaccination than would otherwise have been the case.
You set money aside, a contingency, did you not, in the budget? And when I saw that, I was thinking, does Paschal Donohoe know something they're not telling us about the numbers and about the underlying causes that he's put this money aside?
So what I know is, I think, something that most of our country knows by now. I will never forget the few weeks of last year's budget, where we put together a frame of the budget to get ready for the fact that we may have to lock down our economy again. We may have to make further tough decisions. And I remember being in your studio a year ago, Pat, and we were talking about how big last year's budget was. And you were asking all kinds of questions about, can we afford this? The reality is that by June of this year, all of the funds that I had set aside in last year's budget were all gone.
Yeah.
And that just demonstrated the need for me that even with our better outlook, you have to set something aside, because while I'm really confident we can avoid the challenges of this year, I really believe we can avoid repeating what we went through this year. I still learned that we never really know quite what is around the corner, and best be ready for it.
Do you anticipate a huge return to the office next week? Like on Friday is the 22nd, but the following Monday?
I think that's a little
Tuesday rather, yeah.
I think that's a little less likely at the moment, though we will have to make a final decision on that early next week, because we owe it to employers and we owe it to those who are considering coming back to the office to give clarity on it. We do know that when we go through big changes in mobility and activity within our society, it affects where we are with the disease. The most recent triggers of that are the return to school, the return to college, and we're going to really look at that carefully next week.